In May 1945, as the world reeled from 6 years of devastating conflict, the collapse of Nazi Germany marked the end for one of the deadliest naval threats ever faced by the Allies, the German U-boat fleet. This is the story not just of their surrender, but of the incredible technological secrets they harbored, their violent final destruction, the scientific race for their remains, and their shadowy legacy under new flags in the dawn of the Cold War. The surrender, an unprecedented mass capitulation. At the time of Germany's unconditional surrender, over 150 operational U-boats were still at sea or in ports across occupied Europe. With the war's end, Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, himself a former U-boat commander turned successor to Hitler, issued a stark and historic order to all submariners: cease all hostilities, surface immediately, and surrender to the nearest Allied authority. The infamous wolf packs, which had terrorized Allied merchant convoys with relentless efficiency, were suddenly adrift in a new reality. On May 8, 1945, radio transmissions crackled with coded orders halting attacks and signaling the fleet's total surrender. White flags fluttered atop rust-streaked conning towers as battered U-boats surfaced in the North Atlantic, the Bay of Biscay, and the fjords of Norway. Allied patrol aircraft circled overhead, guiding the once-feared enemy vessels toward ports such as Loch Arabole in Scotland, Lissahallie in Northern Ireland, and Portland in England. Loch Arabole itself soon became a floating graveyard, with nearly 40 U-boats anchored together in a somber parade of defeat. Allied control and secrecy. The process of securing and cataloging the surrendered fleet was precisely managed. Allied warships escorted every submarine into port, where boarding parties quickly seized secret codes, charts, and whatever advanced weaponry could be found. Royal Navy and U.S. Navy engineers conducted thorough inspections. Most vessels were in appalling condition, scarred from months of daily combat, Allied bombs, or even self-sabotage by crews desperate to keep secrets from enemy hands. Captured U-boat crews faced a long period of detention and interrogation. Those with engineering or technical experience found themselves questioned by Allied intelligence, especially the designers and operators of the revolutionary new Elektroboote, type deadliest and XXIII submarines. Some crews languished for months in POW camps, uncertain of their fate, before most were repatriated to a bombed-out, divided Germany by the end of 1945, a technological treasure trove, the type XXIII and XXIII. What made the U-boat fleet exceptionally valuable to Allied powers was cutting-edge technology. The type XXIII and XXIII Elektrobooten represented the future of underwater warfare and were unlike anything previously seen. Type XXIII, in particular, could travel submerged at 5 knots for a staggering 75 hours, before needing to recharge its massive battery banks, in stark contrast to earlier types that spent most of their time on the surface. Its revolutionary streamlined hull, advanced sonar systems, such as the Gruppenhochgerät and Nibelung, 6 bow torpedo tubes with rapid hydraulic reloading and silent running engineering, made it a blueprint for the nuclear submarine age. The U-boats also introduced features such as snorkels, anti-sonar coatings, magnetic jammers, and novel countermeasures to fool Allied hunters' technology envied by all navies. Some were even designed to launch anti-ship rockets vertically. These technical marvels, which arrived too late to turn the tide of war, would determine the course of post-war submarine development worldwide. Operation Deadlight, a fleet sentenced to erasure. By autumn 1945, Allied planners faced a logistical nightmare. What to do with over 100 surrendered enemy submarines? Storing them was not an option. Their maintenance was costly and dangerous. The answer became Operation Deadlight. This top-secret Royal Navy operation planned to tow the majority of the captured fleet out into the Atlantic, deep northwest of Ireland, and systematically sink them. Between November 1945 and February 1946, in the biting winds and icy waves of winter, tugs and destroyers dragged 116 U-boats in loose convoys to dumping grounds designated XX, YY, and Zezes, each over 100 nautical miles from shore. There, the vast majority was sunk by gunfire or explosives, while rough weather and the dreadful condition of the boats caused many to founder en route. Ultimately, more than a third never made it. They capsized or sank under tow before reaching the precise scuttling positions. Royal Navy records note that 56 U-boats foundered before delivery, while only a minority were sunk by charges or naval gunfire at the planned sites. The symbolism was clear. The Allies were removing any chance of Germany reviving a submarine fleet and erasing the physical evidence of their dominance at sea. Yet, beneath the waves, the story of these machines was just beginning. Salvage, study, and scientific rivalry. Not all U-boats perished in Deadlight. The most advanced and best preserved, such as the Type 21 and Paras, were quickly earmarked for study. In August 1945, the Tripartite Naval Commission, representing the United States, United Kingdom, and Soviet Union, divided up the technological spoils. Each superpower received 10 U-boats, prioritizing the revolutionary types, and soon began a science race that would outlast peace. In Britain, the Royal Navy tested boats such as U-17, renamed HMS N-41, repurposing them for endurance trials and as sonic test platforms. Other boats served as live targets for anti-submarine warfare experiments or were loaned to the Canadian Navy for technical evaluation and crew training. The United States transported captured vessels across the Atlantic to naval research yards at Portsmouth and New London, Connecticut. Of particular interest was U-2513, a Type 21 that eventually hosted high-profile visitors, including then-future President Harry S. Truman, who took a brief cruise on board. American submarine engineers thoroughly examined silent running gear, battery systems, periscope optics, and automated torpedo reloading, all rapidly influencing U.S. Navy submarine designs for decades to come. The most notorious cargo carrier, U-234, had set sail from Kiel in March 1945, bound for Japan, with a secret manifest that included technical blueprints for Messerschmitt Me 262 jet fighters, radar apparatus, and a mysterious 560 kilogram, 1,200 pounds, of uranium oxide stored in 50 lead-lined cubes. Its surrender to the U.S. Navy, just days after Donitz's order, led to fevered speculation about whether the uranium found its way into the atomic bomb program at Oak Ridge, Tennessee. The Soviet leap, Project 6 Martin, and the Cold War equally ambitious, was the Soviet Union. The Soviets received several Type 21 boats, most notably U-3515 and U-2529, which were reverse-engineered in exhaustive detail. These studies fueled an explosive boost to Soviet submarine capability, culminating in the development of the so-called Whiskey class, Project 613. The Whiskies eventually, more than 200 strong, borrowed the pressure hull, snorkel, battery innovations, and even hydrodynamics of their German predecessors, and introduced advanced sonar and noise reduction technology for creep drive and silent running. To the west, this sudden technological leap achieved through dissecting German innovation triggered serious anxiety and helped ignite a new arms race beneath the waves. Soviet subs now operated farther, deeper, and more quietly than ever before. U-boats under new flags, the survivors. While hundreds of U-boats were scuttled, a handful entered service with new owners. France, eager to rebuild its navy, acquired several vessels, including U-123, which became the Blazon. Norway, Denmark, and Canada each operated ex-German submarines for training or patrol duties. Norway's U-995, for instance, would briefly serve before being returned to West Germany, ultimately to be restored as a museum ship at Le Beau. The United States preserved its most famous trophy, U-555, which had been captured intact in June 1944. After a dramatic battle off the coast of West Africa, not only did this prize yield valuable codebooks, Enigma machines, and secret German torpedoes, but it also became the first enemy warship displayed on American soil. Today, serving as the centerpiece of the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. The Forgotten Graveyard, Operation Deadlight, Rex. For decades, the resting sites of Operation Deadlight were nearly forgotten, marked only by anonymous Navy coordinates. However, at the turn of the 21st century, maritime archaeologists, most notably Innes McCartney, led deep-sea surveys using sonar and submersibles. Their explorations revealed at least 14 remarkably intact hulls, many lying upright and still armed, now encrusted with cold water coral and shielded by the Atlantic mud. These wrecks form one of the world's largest underwater graveyards, silent testimony to the industrial and human cost of the U-boat program. Legacy and shadows. The U-boat's lasting influence. The innovations of the German U-boat, particularly the Type XXIII, set the foundation for submarine development in both the East and West. Streamlined hull shapes, high-capacity batteries, advanced sonar, and snorkels all became standard, leading directly to the first truly submarines designed to operate primarily underwater, free from the vulnerabilities of surface cruising. Navies around the world integrated German technology, sometimes overtly, sometimes through covert recycling of parts or blueprints. The Cold War arms race beneath the Arctic and Atlantic owed its start to discoveries made in gloomy, abandoned U-boat hulls. Yet for all their technical brilliance, these submarines now stand for more than innovation. They represent lost lives, strategic folly, and a warning from history. Over 30,000 German submariners perished, many entombed in their vessels, while countless Allied sailors never returned home. Their machines, both sunken and preserved, draw thousands of visitors each year at sites like La Bow, Hamburg, Lorient, Birkenhead, and Chicago, helping keep alive the memory of a desperate, shadowy battle beneath the waves. Human cost and remembrance. It is important not to lose sight of the human dimension. The U-boat campaign cost tens of thousands of lives, both German and Allied. Sailors endured weeks or months in claustrophobic, damp, and dangerous conditions, often knowing that odds of survival were slim. Today's museum boats allow visitors to physically experience the cramped conditions and marvel at the complex machinery that dictated life or death decisions in the darkness. For many, these wrecks are not just relics, but war graves preserved by cold and pressure, unexplored by light, and echoing with stories of courage, desperation, and sacrifice. Conclusion: from Empire of Steel to Echoes in the Deep. The narrative of the German U-boats after World War II is not merely about defeat or destruction. It is a tale of technological legacy, scientific rivalry, and the ongoing quest to learn from the shadows of the past. The scuttled hulls beneath the Atlantic serve as silent guardians of history, while the preserved boats educate new generations about one of the most decisive and dangerous chapters in naval warfare. The empire of steel that almost strangled Allied commerce now rests in silence, above water, and below between memory and the sea.